Welcome to the Creator's Covenant, a modern exploration of timeless truths of faith. Centered on the Quran as the sole source, we examine sacred texts, history, and science to reveal humanity's purpose, our bond with the Creator, and our destiny beyond life. Discover divine wisdom and Quranic insights.
هو الله ربي لا إله سواه علم نور الغيوب ومحكم الآيات.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We know you want knowledge that's thorough, but also gets straight to the point. Today, well, we're diving into something pretty intense. We've got source material proposing a radically different map of sacred history and geography.
That's putting it mildly. We're looking exclusively at the work of Dr. Khaled Waleed from the YouTube channel Almighty Covenant. He presents, let's call it a fundamental challenge to centuries of Abrahamic tradition.
Yeah, it's quite something. Dr. Waleed uses his own method, textual analysis, but bringing in science, history. He argues the core truths have been, well, hidden for maybe 1,200 years or more. So our mission today is to really unpack his biggest claims.
And there are three huge ones we need to focus on, all attributed directly to his analysis. First, this idea that Israel, the entity, actually predates Adam.
Okay, hold on. Predates Adam.
Yes. Second, that the true Qibla, the direction of prayer and spiritual center, isn't Mecca as we know it, but Beca, Jerusalem, Espaju.
Great. And the third?
The third is that the place traditionally identified as Mecca, or Makkah, in Saudi Arabia, is historically incorrect. He identifies it as Petra, Jordan.
Petra. Yeah. Okay, so this isn't just tweaking interpretations. This feels like rewriting the rulebook entirely. Creation, conflict, where people pray, that changes everything. Let's start with why. Why does Dr. Waleed think such a drastic revision is even necessary? What's wrong with the inherited story?
Well, Dr. Waleed starts with a really strong critique of what he calls inherited religion. He basically says that most of the concepts taught, across Sunni, Shia, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox lines for the last millennium or so, they weren't actually sanctioned by God.
Not sanctioned. What does he mean? Like man-made interpretations?
More than that. He puts a specific date on it, around 1,275 years ago, linking it to the Abbasid era. He argues that's when the original divine instructions got systematically replaced.
The Abbasids. Why them specifically?
His analysis suggests that the Abbasids, coming after the Umayyads, engaged in a massive project of rewriting history and religious narratives to solidify their own power. He claims they replaced true spiritual knowledge with systems of control. He actually uses the term magic, not religion, implying it became about ritual and obedience, not genuine connection or truth.
Magic, not religion. That's a heavy charge. So he's saying nearly everything passed down since the 8th century is essentially a fabrication designed for control.
That's his assertion. And he points to the consequences division, conflict. He highlights the horrific death tolls, like 30 million in European religious wars, as direct evidence that these inherited, politicized doctrines lead to suffering and humiliation, not peace.
So for him, the reason we need this new inquiry now is because we have access to information, science, history, the texts themselves.
Exactly. He stresses that in the modern age, blind following is obsolete. Individuals have not just the right, but maybe even the obligation to critically examine inherited beliefs and reject them if they don't hold up against the source texts and reason.
No more relying on clerics or priests.
He's quite adamant about that. He says their authority to dictate belief is invalid. The focus must return solely to the original source, which, for his work, is the Quran.
Okay, so he uses only the Quran plus science and history to find what he calls missing concepts. And his key interpretive tool is this idea of azwaj, duality or pairs. How does that work?
Azwaj is fundamental to his whole framework. He believes God created everything in pairs, good and evil, light and dark, mercy and judgment. It's a universal principle of balance or opposition. He sees it everywhere.
Like Tor Sinin and Tor Sinai.
Right. Or, crucially for this discussion, Beca and Makkah. Identifying these pairs, he argues, allows us to uncover the original meanings that were obscured, especially by those Abbasid narratives.
This dualism thing, it immediately brings us to how he reinterprets Iblis, or Satan. The traditional view often frames Iblis's refusal to bow to Adam as shirk, associating partners with God, right? Pride over command. But Dr. Waleed rejects this.
Completely. He says there's no Quranic evidence for Iblis committing shirk. His argument is that shirk involves worshiping something higher than yourself alongside God. Iblis, being a powerful spiritual entity, wouldn't make that kind of error.
So if not shirk, What was Iblis's transgression?
Dr. Waleed insists it was kafar, which means covering the truth or disbelief. Iblis didn't deny God's divinity. She denied or covered the truth about Adam's status and purpose, refused to acknowledge it.
Okay, that's a subtle but significant difference. It changes Iblis's role.
Profoundly. It makes Iblis less of a rival deity and more of a functional part of the cosmic system. Her role, her kafar, is to enact the ibtila, the trial, the test for humanity. It's a necessary function.
A necessary part of the test. So Iblis isn't pure evil, but serves a purpose in the divine plan.
That's how he presents it. Iblis provides the resistance, the temptation that allows for human spiritual growth and choice. And this puts her in direct opposition in that dualistic framework with another figure, Idris. Idris represents peace, guidance, the path to secure faith or iman.
So the universe is this stage for the tension between Iblis's test, kafar, and Idris's guidance, iman.
Precisely. And this cosmic tension, this duality, Dr. Waleed argues, isn't just abstract, it's mapped directly onto the physical earth, which leads us straight into his geographical bombshell, the conflict between Beca and Mecca. Right, so this geographical duality between Beca and Mecca is where Dr. Waleed anchors his entire cosmology. It's the physical manifestation of azwaj, representing the fundamental choice humanity faces.
Let's start with Beca. He says Beca is Jerusalem Al-Quds, found in the Quran, also the Bible. What's the core spiritual meaning he attaches to Beca?
Based on his linguistic work, he traces Beca to a root meaning giving, outpouring, alata. So Beca Jerusalem is intrinsically the place of giving. Spiritually, it's Dar al-Salam, the abode of peace.
Dar al-Salam. And he connects this directly to God's names.
Yes, very specifically to al-Salam, safety, and al-Mumin, security. For Dr. Waleed, Beca isn't just historically significant, it's the geographic point designated by God to guarantee safety and security for humanity if they uphold the covenant associated with it.
And physically, what's the focal point within Jerusalem?
He identifies it as the Rock of the Dome, Ayat. This, he claims, is the actual physical center of the earth, the location of the Mishar al-Haram, the sacred monument.
The sacred monument.
Yeah.
And the Hajj, the pilgrimage.
The true Hajj, according to Dr. Waleed, is to Beca, Jerusalem. The path of the righteous involves passing through the gates of mercy, specifically at Jabal Zaytun, the Mount of Olives. Beca is the axis mundi, the stable center, and he states it's the only gateway to the higher heavens, Jannah.
Okay, so Beca is Jerusalem, the center of giving, peace, safety, security, and the true pilgrimage site. Now, the counterpoint, Mecca. This is where he claims the traditional site is wrong, and it's actually Petra, Jordanian.
Yeah.
That's a massive shift. What's their reasoning?
It follows the Azwat principle. If Beca means giving, then Mecca, linguistically, must mean the opposite. He argues it signifies taking or slavery, al salt.
Taking, slavery.
Yes. He connects the root Mak to ideas of constriction, haste, destruction. He identifies Mecca Petra as the center of fitna, temptation, trial, societal corruption. He even calls it Mecca the destroyer, hasty, al-halika al-mutafika.
So a direct polar opposite to Beca's peace and safety, because the axis of salam, Mecca Petra is the axis of fitna and taking...
Domination.
Exactly. And he finds textual support for this in the paired names of God in Surah Al-Hushur, verse 23. He maps them geographically.
That's so.
Beca, which he aligns with the West, Maghrib, gets the attributes of stability and peace. Al-Malik, the sovereign. Al-Quds, the holy. And critically, Al-Salam, safety. Al-Mumin, security.
Okay.
Mecca Petra, aligned with the East, Mashriq, gets the attributes associated with power and severity. Al-Muhammad, the guardian overseer. Al-Aziz, the mighty. Al-Jabbar, the compeller. Al-Mutakabir, the majestic supreme. Domination and power versus safety and security. That's a very neat structure he's built. But what's the actual evidence for swapping Mecca with Petra? The traditional site in the Chez has been the Qibla for, 14 centuries? How does he discredit that location using the Quran?
He argues the Hijaz location simply doesn't match the Quranic descriptions of the original site descriptions, which, he claims, involve things like abundant water, fertile valleys nearby, and clear connections to the earlier prophet stories. Whereas Petra, a major ancient trading hub known for control and taxation, literally taking, fits the profile of a center of worldly temptation, Mecca. Far better.
A center of commerce and taking versus spiritual giving.
Right. He also suggests historical records, if read correctly, show the Qibla shift towards the Hijaz was a political maneuver by the Abbasids to consolidate power away from the original prophetically significant region around Jerusalem Petra.
So the direction you pray, the Qibla, becomes this profound choice. Facing Beca aligns you with giving and safety. Facing Mecca aligns you
with taking, domination, and ultimately with the source of the test, Iblis. This leads to his most startling conclusion about the current state of the world.
Which is?
That by choosing, or being led to choose, the Qibla of Mecca, the vast majority of people have inadvertently broken their covenant with God. They've aligned themselves with the forces of taking.
And the consequences are tangible.
Absolutely. He argues this misalignment is the direct spiritual root of the poverty, oppression, humiliation, and conflict seen across the globe. People are, in his view, literally facing the Qibla of Iblis, the center of fitna, instead of the Qibla of Idris, the center of salam.
How does he connect that spiritual choice to, say, geopolitics or economics today? How does facing the wrong direction lead to actual oppression?
Because, in his framework, by turning away from Beca, the source of guaranteed safety, al-salam, and security, al-mumin, people spiritually forfeit that divine protection. This leaves them vulnerable to manipulation and control by the forces associated with Mecca, the forces of taking. And identifying who those forces are brings us to his most radical claim about creation itself. Okay, so to understand who embodies this taking principle, Dr. Waleed completely upends the traditional timeline of creation. This is where it gets very complex. His core assertion: the entity Israel and the lineage Bani Israel existed before Adam.
Whoa, okay. Before Adam. So Israel isn't like the grandson of Abraham in this model. It's something much older, cosmic.
Precisely. He defines this original Israel as an individual entity, one of the Nephil fallen angels or powerful pre-Adamic beings mentioned in ancient texts. This entity Israel was already present on Earth.
A fallen angel named Israel. And Iblis.
Dr. Waleed states that Iblis, whom he consistently identifies as a female entity, married this male entity, Israel, and this union happened before Adam was even created.
Okay, so Iblis, the force of the test, aligned with Mecca taking, marries Israel, a pre-Adamic fallen angel. This sounds like the origin story for the ultimate antagonists. What about their children?
Their offspring are the Majaj, known in English as Gog. And here's the crucial link Dr. Waleed makes. He identifies these Majaj as Bani Israel.
Majoj are Bani Israel, not just allied with them, but the same lineage.
That's his claim. This lineage, the Majid Bani Israel, is described as the military financial group responsible throughout history for breaking covenants, spilling blood, and fostering corruption.
Let me try to process this. He's saying the fundamental conflict isn't just Jew versus Muslim versus Christian or East versus West in a political sense. It's a cosmic battle between two lineages. The Adami line, descended from Adam, linked to Idris and Beca, giving peace.
Correct.
Versus the Israeli line, descended from the pre-Adamic union of Israel, and Iblis the Majos linked to Mecca, taking corruption. And these Majos are the modern global elite, the financial and military controllers.
Exactly that. He explicitly identifies the Majaj, the 1%, the controllers of global finance and military apparatuses, as the inheritors and continuation of this pre-Adamic Israeli lineage. Their function, in his view, is to actively prevent humanity from achieving the safety and security promised at Beca by creating systems economic, political, social, based on taking, greed, and division. Systems designed to cause hunger, conflict, confusion, directly violating the security promised in the Quran, like in Taha 118-119, where Adam is assured he won't hunger or be naked in the garden. The current global system is the system of the Majoj, designed to keep people trapped in materialism and fear.
So things like global banking, military conflicts, even widespread poverty, he sees these as direct manifestations of this ancient ongoing war between the Adami and Israeli lineages.
Yes, it reframes everything. The struggle over Jerusalem, for instance, becomes the literal physical battleground for control between the lineage of Beca Idris and the lineage of Mecca Israel. Choosing the wrong Qibla, for Dr. Waleed, means empowering the Majaj.
This reinterpretation of creation also extends to the afterlife. You mentioned he sees Jannah, the gardens, differently, not just spiritual.
Right. He pushes back against purely abstract notions. He describes Jannahs as material planets or lands, real physical places, perhaps in other dimensions or star systems, but tangible.
Material planets, like Earth, but better.
Similar, yes, but operating at a higher level, higher energy, advanced knowledge, vastly longer lifespans. Think of them as higher planes of existence within the physical cosmos, not just a heavenly realm separate from it.
So salvation isn't just about the soul going somewhere, it's a physical transition.
That's his interpretation. The righteous, those who align with Beca and the giving principle of Idris, are permitted to physically enter or transition to these higher level jhanas.
And those who reject Beca, who follow the taking path associated with Mecca and the Majoj,
they remain bound to this current earth. And for them, according to Dr. Waleed, this earth, in its state of conflict, suffering, and corruption, the state fostered by the Majoj, becomes Jahannam. Hell isn't just a future punishment. It's the reality experienced now by those spiritually misaligned. They are, as he puts it, crouching outside the walls of the true center, Beca, Jerusalem, trapped in the domain of Iblis.
Wow. So the choice of alignment has immediate material consequences, both in this life and determining one's potential transition to a higher physical existence.
Absolutely. And having laid out this cosmic history and geography, Dr. Waleed then clarifies the roles of the key players involved, particularly angels and prophets. He has a specific take on how they interact with their world.
Yeah, you mentioned angels like Gabriel and Michael materializing as humans. Bashar Salih, a perfect human form. Why is that concept important for him?
It bridges the gap between the spiritual and physical. Angels need to materialize, he argues, to interact directly and transmit knowledge, like Harut and Marut in the Quranic story. It demystifies divine communication.
And this applies to prophets, too.
Yes. It leads him to argue that prophets, including Muhammad, weren't aberrations. They functioned within this established system of divine messengers, materializing at the central point, which he insists was always Beca, Jerusalem. They all delivered the same core message of peace and submission to the one God, centered on Beca. It emphasizes the unity of the message over the individuality of the messenger.
Okay, so the focus stays on the message and the location, Beca.
Yeah.
And this message is embodied by the two opposing leaders in this cosmic drama, Iblis and Idris.
Exactly. He paints a clear picture of these dual leaders. Iblis, the female entity, is aligned with the East, Mecca Petra. She embodies the Ibtila, the necessary test or trial. Her followers are the Majid Bani Israel, the agents of taking, aggression, and societal breakdown.
The force of the trial based in Mecca Petra.
Idris is the male leader, aligned with the West, Beca, Jerusalem. He represents fitna, but here, fitna seems to mean more like the trial leading to wisdom, the path of guidance. His focus is entirely on giving, restoring order, and upholding the peace of Beca, Dar al-Salam. Dr. Waleed identifies Idris with figures known for justice and knowledge, like Du al-Qarnayn and Imran.
So, two leaders, two locations, two principles, taking versus giving, test versus guidance. And this isn't a past conflict. Dr. Waleed says this struggle between the Adami line, Idris Beca, and the Israeli line, Iblis Mecca Mashoj, is ongoing until the end.
It's the fundamental structure of existence, yes, it continues, which means for every individual there's a constant critical choice to be made.
Which he frames as,
are you with Iblis and Mecca, the East, aligning with taking and the test? Or are you with Idris and Beca, the West, aligning with giving and guidance? It's stark.
And this choice isn't just belief. He talks about moving from Islam, submission, to Iman, faith and security. How does knowing about Beca facilitate that?
Islam, simple submission, is the baseline. But achieving Iman, true security, and faith requires, in his view, actively embracing the knowledge of Beca. Understanding its role as the center of al-Salam, safety, and al-Mumin, security, allows one to consciously choose the path of giving and align with the divine guarantee of protection. It's moving from passive belief to active, knowledgeable alignment that brings security. Rejecting Beca means remaining in a state vulnerable to the taking forces.
And this leads to his final call, a call for unity across different faiths.
Yes, it's quite remarkable. He basically says, Sunni, Shia, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, stop focusing on the minor doctrinal differences that he claims were manufactured by the Abbasids and exploited by the Majaj lineage to keep you divided and weak.
He thinks those divisions are artificial.
Largely, yes. Weaponized distractions. He argues that if everyone returned to the core truth found solely in the Quran, centered on the reality of Beca, Jerusalem as the place of giving and peace, they'd realize they share a common enemy, the system of taking and corruption represented by Mecca Petra and its associated lineage. Unity under the banner of Beca al-Salam is, for him, the only way to overcome the global strife perpetuated by the Majoj.
A radical diagnosis and an equally radical prescription for unity based on this geographical and theological reinterpretation. It really brings us full circle on Dr. Khaled Waleed's comprehensive, if highly unconventional, worldview. #tag outro.
It really does. We've covered a tremendous amount. And just to recap the core discoveries attributed solely to Dr. Waleed's analysis. First, the idea that Israel predates Adam, forming the Majid Bani Israel lineage with Iblis, identified as today's global controllers.
Second, the claim that Mecca is actually Petra, Jordan, representing the center of taking and the domain of Iblis.
And third, the central assertion that Beca, Jerusalem is the true Qibla, the axis of peace, Dar al-Salam, linked to Idris giving and God's names Al-Salam and Al-Mumin, safety and security.
What's really striking is how he's built this entire internally consistent cosmology using just his interpretation of the Quran combined with historical and scientific points. It fundamentally challenges, well, almost everything in traditional religious and geopolitical understanding, history, geography, theology. It's all remapped based on this Beca duality.
And the whole system rests on that promise tied to Beca, that the universe fundamentally operates on the principles of Al-Salam, safety, and Al-Mumin, security. Upholding the covenant of Beca guarantees these. Breaking it by turning towards Mecca Petra invites domination and chaos.
Which leaves us with a really potent final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. If Dr. Waleed's framework holds any weight, if safety and security truly are tied to the giving nature of Beca and domination to the taking nature he associates with Mecca Petra, then beyond prayer direction or belief systems, what practical everyday actions could embody that giving principle? How might one align with Beca's essence in daily life rather than Mecca's, regardless of where you physically are?
Yeah, thinking about the choice between the Adami Idris path and the Israeli Iblis path as a daily choice between generosity and greed, between contribution and consumption. That makes this cosmic struggle intensely personal, doesn't it? Maybe true alignment is less about geography and more about, well, how we actually choose to live and interact with each other.
Definitely food for thought. We hope this deep dive into Dr. Khaled Waleed's discoveries has given you a lot to consider. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.
ردوها علينا إني استطعتم ولن تستطيعوا